Recording in progress.
Now.
Walter, can you hear us? Walter,
Yes,
so member present, I think is what just.
Oh, he probably didn't hear any of that. Yeah,
Okay.
we're doing the roll call.
Doing the roll call, so chime in, please.
Walter Talbot, member present.
Bill?
Bill McCants, member present. I didn't hear the pre-speech either, for whatever it's worth.
Okay, good to know. Thank you. Tony?
Tony Rodolakis, member present.
Chirag?
Chirag Stalikar, member present.
Craig?
Rebecca Telfmo, member present.
Martha?
Martha Moore, Vice Chair present.
Brian Bowe, Chair present. All right, and I will review the agenda. A relatively short agenda tonight. We have 3 hearings listed, although one will be continued. These are, the first one is Wood End Cemetery. It's a notice of intent about doing some knotweed removal. Then we have 167 Belmont Street, continuation from a previous meeting. And this is a RDA. Then we go to Cedar Swamp Conversation, which is the one that will be continued. And that's it for hearings. Then we're on to things such as violation notices. We have a few certificates of compliance to consider. Any bill to be approved, an update on conservation DPW coordination meeting, any administrative report, and then some minutes we have to approve. So having said that, why don't we jump right into a discussion on the Wood End Cemetery? Is there anybody here? Okay. Yeah,
Brian, I'm willing to do the minutes for this meeting.
thank you for offering that.
You're welcome.
All ready? Yeah, Mike, could you just introduce yourself for the record?
Yeah, I'm Mike Kessman. I am the Assistant Director of Public Works here with the town of Reading.
Why don't you tell us a bit about the project you
Sure, I have a little write-up here. I guess I'll just read that. My name is Michael Kessman, Assistant Director of the Reading DPW, requesting approval for this project on behalf of the town of Reading Cemetery Division. Please see the attached NOI, subject being removal and chemical treatment of an isolated area of knotweed at the Wood End Cemetery. The area is approximately 1,000 square feet and is located approximately 65 feet from the wetland as determined by Conservation Administrator Chuck Gironi, observed by me on June 11th, 2024. Knotweed is mostly growing out of the stone wall, but is spreading into the lawn, which is an area of new grave plots, and this is an isolated area of growth. The goal is to treat and control this isolated area before it has a chance to spread further. The work is proposed in the area identified on the map dated 7/9/24, noted as treatment area that's up on the screen. Scope of work proposed includes cutting the knotweed approximately 12 inches off the ground and then dripping an aquatically formulated glyphosate into the hollow stem of the plant. Ideally, the town would like to see this completed this year during the late summer and early fall months, which is the ideal treatment window for this type of application, as advised by Essex Horticulture. I've engaged Essex Horticulture to prepare a scope of work and quote associated with this work. Purchase order has been approved based off this quote. Hence, approval by the Conservation Commission is the final step required to move forward. If approved, the Reading DPW will act swiftly to see the work completed during the ideal treatment window. Under this proposal, Essex Horticulture will also remove the knotweed from town property and properly dispose of all such material. And I would like to thank you for your time and respectfully request the approval of this proposal.
Thank you. And before we get to questions, I realized that I was remiss in not reading our opening blurb for this project, so let me go back and do that. It's open a public hearing on notice of intent filed by Assistant DPW Director Michael Kessman pursuant to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Wetlands Protection Act and/or the Reading Wetland Protection Bylaw, Section 7.1. The applicant is proposing general maintenance activity to chemically remove knotweed using glyphosate with a cut and drip method at Woodend Cemetery. All of the work is within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. The application and plans can be viewed during regular business hours at the Town Hall Conservation Office, 16 Lowell Street, Reading, Mass. 01867, on the Conservation Division page under the project by year. Assessors map 52, lot 778. Sorry if it didn't. Okay, so now, do any commission members have any questions? And ideally, we would start with you, Walter. I can't see you. Do you have any questions, Walter?
Excuse me, Brian, start with a summary of the site visit.
Yeah, there were four of us that went out there Monday. I'm not familiar with the procedure other than I hear the word roundup and I get a little bit worried. But these people are professional. And the only concern I would have is the supervision so that people aren't cutting shortcuts.
Okay, Tony, you were on a site visit. Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I'll add that there were in fact four of us who went. We saw the stand of knotweed in the northwest corner of the cemetery. Just behind the knotweed is, it's built on the edge of, it occurs at the edge of a built retaining wall made with giant stones. It's about at least 8 to 10 foot drop to the land behind it, where it's relatively flat, goes about 15 or 20 feet. What appears to be a walking trail. And then the wetlands must be far beyond that.
It's at about 65 feet from
65
the edge of the knotweed is the wetland.
Okay. So there's a fair amount of space between the retaining wall and the wetland, and there wasn't much knotweed actually growing in the retaining wall. Most of it was in the lawn area, at the edge of the lawn area at the top of the wall. So that's more or less what we saw when we were there. I would note that the cut and stem injection is also the method that Mass Audubon recommends for treating knotweed with glyphosate in the same time of year. These treatments sometimes require multiple visits. Could you talk about a long-term monitoring or maintenance plan?
We are going to keep our eyes on it going forward. If you guys approve, we'll treat it this year. We'll revisit it next year. I believe if this is approved, we have 3 years under this. My understanding, and we can revisit it next year as necessary. We certainly want to go back if we need to and do what we can to eradicate it. So we have discussed that, yes.
So point of clarification, you're requesting one treatment. You're not requesting treatment for 3 years, so I think so maybe you might want to,
I'm sorry, we're requesting one treatment. If necessary, we'll do another filing when the time comes, whatever format we need to do.
Since we're on the topic of invasives, right in the middle of that stand of knotweed is a tree of heaven. Any chance you would knock that off at the same time?
I'd be happy to.
And if you continue around the corner to the north, there's another tree of heaven right about where that orange arrow points.
Mhm. If you guys would allow us to, we would certainly be happy to.
I wouldn't want to take out the knotweed only to have a tree of heaven plant tree right over there raining down more invasives on top of it.
Chuck, do you-
Problem.
something you want to say about that?
I think we should allow them if they want to take it out.
Yeah.
But not, it's because it's cemetery property, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if it works out and they
Works out.
like to take it out, then that should be the condition.
I wouldn't even make it a condition. It's just a request, an observation.
I just looked into what happens if you cut down a tree of heaven and all the roots send up a whole bunch of new little baby trees of heaven. So I think if they were gonna take out the tree of heaven, they would need some advice from Essex Horticultural or something like that, a way to take out the tree of heaven without producing a forest of sumps.
One other question I have is, once you remove the knotweed, what will you be planting there? And how will that be maintained?
The intent right now is to remove the knotweed and let the lawn come back. We want to see the lawn go all the way up to the stone wall.
Would you seed it?
I haven't gotten that far yet, to be honest with you. I don't know if we would want to dig it up and put in clean loam and clean seed, if that's something that we need to come back to the commission for, if we would just want to treat the knotweed and let it come back naturally, and see what happens. But right now, the focus is more on getting rid of the knotweed and the next step.
Because my personal intimate experience with trees of heaven is, you're right, the roots do send up, but occasional mowing is usually enough to take care of that over time.
Yeah, and maybe weed whacking in the wall. Because the tree of heaven's gonna be coming up in among the rocks of the wall. You can't mow there.
Right.
And when I looked into it, there was, painting the bark with a chemical to kill the tree before you cut it down would prevent those shoots, but I don't know that we want to do that near the wetland. So
But it sounds like, it sounds like
issue,
they have a bid for a certain amount of work and we're going outside of that bid.
Outside of it.
right?
So that's why I just said if they want to do it, they can, but they have other permits that are gonna come up that involves trees of heaven. And there's no description of how they would take care of tree of heaven on this proposal. I would suggest that the commission at least see how they would take care of it prior to just saying, go ahead and do it. But two of them seemed reasonable, but if there were more than that, I would be a little more cautious.
I mean, I can certainly engage Essex to get advice from them on how to properly treat the tree of heaven while they're there. If he needs a little more money, we could figure that out, if you guys would allow that.
Yeah, my big concern is that with a source of another invasive problem looming literally overhead, are we taking out the knotweed only to create a tree of heaven issue?
Right, so maybe the question is this phase one and you're gonna come back and look at whatever else is out there for invasive such as this tree heaven? I did want to say Allianz, but I didn't. So
In the
anyways,
spirit of Mike Hannaford, the Allianz tree. I didn't even notice that the tree of heavens were there, to be honest with you.
so what if there was 25 of them out there? If someone took account, it sounds like they're gonna have to come back, because I know that Mike Hannaford and Mike Kessman talked to me about another site where they do want to take care of tree of heaven. So maybe that permit could turn into several locations.
That is fine by me.
And then we would have a plan from Essex or from whoever to do this treatment.
We are looking at another site, Charles Lawn Cemetery. We're in discussion about that, and that's a much more.
So given that, then we can focus this back on the knot,
Yeah, let's just focus on the knotweed here.
deal with that.
Yep.
And then if the next thing comes up. Tony, do you have anything else you want to add?
I'm all set, thank you.
Okay. I can't see, hang on a second, Martha. Can't see any hands. Is anybody out there in Zoom land? Got their hand up?
Let me see, just
I,
now for a second.
yeah, this is Bill. I just want to say I went out to the property on Sunday evening. I was just impressed by the sheer size of the stand and just want to echo the concern. I understand it's application for 1 year, but if you got rid of all of that completely and forever in 1 year, I think they'd do articles about you and so forth. So I share the concern about needing to revisit this.
Yeah, and I'll just take an opportunity now to say, that's not what I meant. I said, we're looking at an application with one treatment in it. I mean, the commission wouldn't allow a treatment each year or revisiting with a, they could just write something up and send it to the commission with a date and time when it's going to happen again. So you could approve treatment over that. Typically, it's 5 years for knotweed or any kind of invasives. But we could do 3 years if you wanted to do that, and they would just give the commission notice and also, scope of work.
And would the conditions, whatever they may be, that we impose on this NOI apply to the next year and the next year?
It would be the same NOI, so these conditions would move forward. Yeah.
Okay.
We're just saying 3 treatments.
Yeah, okay. Bill, do you have anything else?
No, actually, that sounds great to me. The idea of 3 years versus 1 for the reasons, Tony stated, and I appreciated Chuck's elaboration. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you, Martha.
I went out there this afternoon and, I think it's definitely worth taking out the knotweed. I'm scrolling through my photos right now. Besides knotweed, there were, right in that same stone wall, a large buckthorn and a bunch of bittersweet. So similar to Tony's concern about the tree of heaven, while you're doing the knotweed, I wonder whether those other invasives that are growing in the same wall should be included in this scope of treatment, or whether we should come back and deal with them on a separate day. They're all right in among the knotweed along the same stretch.
I would love to amend my proposal with Essex to treat all the invasives that are in the area, and if, I'm sure the town of Reading would be able to fund it while we're there. They're the industry professionals that do this type of work. I mean, that makes complete sense to me.
Do you have a thought on that, Chuck?
Yeah, we don't know what they're going to use for treatment, so we can't condition it. I don't know if they're going to do basal treatment or, spray or cut and dab, bloody glove, whatever else you call these things. But if it was glyphosate and they would just cut, usually on the bittersweet, they would just cut a 6-inch peach off and they would cap the bottom. They would color what they're using, the glyphosate. And that seems to be pretty similar. So, we're not the experts here, neither is Essex, and they're not here tonight. But if they would use the same chemical, I would feel more confident about expanding the list of invasives they could treat.
So what we could do is have you talk to them to see how they would address it and what it would cost. And then come back to us with amendments saying this is what you found out.
I would honestly prefer just to move forward with the knotweed as a standalone project and then revisit everything else at a later date so that we don't miss the treatment window for the knotweed.
So revisit it in what context though? What mechanism?
Another filing or whatever context is appropriate.
When do you think you might do that? I mean, if you do that in December, it probably doesn't help.
Yeah, that would probably be later this fall. Realistically,
Could it be a minor modification?
So buckthorn and bittersweet, pretty easy to take care of, one plant. I mean, buckthorn, that's a mechanical method for both of these. It doesn't have to be chemical.
How about we just try to pull the other stuff and no treatment?
And since there was like one or two,
Right.
I mean, again, if they want to get into it. Yeah,
It might be just something that, like the bittersweet, the DPW staff could cut the stem and take a chunk out of the middle and see what happens with that and not have to do chemical treatment. I would be comfortable with that.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So having said that, though, in my mind, that puts more pressure on planting something. And now we're talking about not only addressing the knotweed, but whatever else is in that area. That area is going to be a big target for other invasives. So I would like to see you do something about putting that in this project. However you're going to address it, plant seed, whatever, but not just leave it till later, because that big an area open.
I mean, we could certainly plant grass seed up to the rock wall.
Yeah, I mean, that would be consistent with what's there.
Yeah,
So
and the intent is to get the lawn established, keep it as a lawn.
now, how would that be, how would that amend the current NOI? Could we do that as just the condition, so he doesn't have to resubmit a
so
NOI?
you just want to say, just establish lawn in the area where the buckthorn.
Yeah.
Where the Japanese knotweed is.
Yeah,
So the first year, so they're gonna cut and down, the first year, you're just gonna have like brittle remnants of Japanese knotweed. And most likely, vegetation will grow out again, so they'd have to treat it again. So you're really talking year 3. So that which would give them time.
okay, but is the area suspect to other things growing in? Because the knotweed is cut way back, there's more sunlight, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes and no. Yes, if it was just a typical area, but this is a highly sought after piece of property with the DPW going out there all the time. If something else starts establishing it themselves, sure, we'll either get a notice of intent or Mike Hannaford would just use a mechanical method to
Okay.
get it out of there.
That's
So,
As long as we feel that won't become.
We'll certainly keep our eyes on the area, and if we see something, established that's out of control, I'll communicate with Chuck.
yeah, these are all good questions. This is like a pilot program. We wanted, well, not me, but the DPW wanted to see the reaction of the Conservation Commission and understand the questions you're getting. And so it sounds like if there's more invasives out there, the plan that you come to the commission with the next time should include those.
Yep.
And that's what I'm hearing. And then the chemicals, and if they're different chemicals, of course, we'd want all the information on that also.
I do have a couple of other concerns. I noticed you're the one here presenting, even though Essex is the one that created the plan. So I would have loved to have a representative of Essex here so that they could answer our questions tonight. So you're talking pilot program, so I think that would be a change I would love to see for future proposals, is to actually have the Essex people here.
I think if we're getting into the next project, that's a larger scope and a large enough scope to bring them in, certainly do that. But the size and scope of this project, at the end of the day, I felt I could handle.
Okay, and I know with some pesticide use, there's concern about overspray that gets other plants around. And I know this stand is either grass or knotweed, but are there controls that they are going to use to protect the area from overspray or spillage?
Whatever industry standards that exist and their best practices to avoid spillage, they will certainly do. In terms of the application, it's not a spray, it's a cut and drip, where I believe they have some type of a bottle with a pointed tip where they drip in, or it's some type of like a syringe where they suck up and squirt down in, so it's a very controlled application.
It's not like the
Targeted.
ginkgo daubers that they used on the buckthorn.
No,
It's a
Different.
syringe kind of.
yeah, I believe it's either a syringe or a bottle with a tip that they squeeze and it drips right in there, so it's a very controlled application.
And I didn't see anything in here that was actually written by a environmental scientist from Essex. Did I miss it, or is there something in?
It's just his scope of work that describes the treatment and says that cut and dab method.
It's just
there-
this little.
Yeah,
thing
that's
here.
their proposal. Remove and dispose of all knotweed, cut to approximately 12 inches and drip aquatically formulated glyphosate, incinerate biomass. So
I
that's.
would liked a more comprehensive report from them
Mhm,
of the safety measures they were gonna take, for example.
sure.
And is there going to be a trained monitor there at the site when they're doing the work? Or, you know, like, are they hiring minimum wage workers to go out and do this, or are there gonna be an environmental scientist on site?
I believe there'll be some type of environmental scientist on site. I mean, Essex Horticulture is a reputable company that does this type of work. Anybody that works for him is certified to do this type of work. I don't know if the owner, Zach himself, is planning on being there specifically for this, but if that, you know, is a sensitive issue for you guys, and you'd like him to be here, I can certainly request that of him.
So what you're asking is you're asking if there's a licensed applicator on site or if all workers are licensed applicators. I think another group, I don't want to mention the names because they're talking about Essex tonight. I think all of their staff is licensed applicators. So maybe likely with Essex Horticultural also. That would be something to find out. I mean,
I'm under the impression, not to interrupt you, Chuck, I'm under the impression all of his staff are licensed to do this work.
Okay,
It's not just one man holds the license and he hires unqualified people to come in and do it.
I would feel more comfortable if that is.
which I believe is allowed though.
What's
Um,
that?
I think that's allowed. I think you can work on someone's license.
Oh, are you? Okay, I didn't know that. This is a little bit of a learning experience for me too, honestly.
Yeah, and often, or I think always with notice of intent, we generally get a survey, a plot plan, and all we have is this, picture. So, I don't know if you know, I think I'm not objecting to approving this just because we're missing the plot plan, but in the future, I would love to see a GIS section of the piece of property that we're talking about, more close-up view.
Also, Martha, if I could add, the wetland boundary that showed on the slide is from the National Wetland Inventory, which is done through aerial imaging. It's not an on-the-ground delineation.
Yeah, me and Mike talked about this and, again, wanted to see your reaction. I mean, I wasn't so curious. I was trying to push him to, you know, submit what other people with notices of intent submit. But, it was a small stand. It was worth seeing what happened, but, what I'm hearing is for the next one, by the rules, we would want a, you know, wetland survey. We'd want a plan.
It's certainly the more comprehensive the program, I think the better the information on which it's built.
So we do have a list of requirements for our notices of intent. And it's, you know, an RDA would have less, you know, sketches and things like that. And the notice of intent would, and I guess a wetland scientist may or may not be required. I mean, that's depending on the site, but certainly I like to have plans because you can, after the project's over, you can look at it and say you went too far. You know, you have an accurate plan in front of you and jurisdictional setbacks and all that. So,
Also, in my experience, if a line is submitted in an NOI, it tends to stick around. Tends to get accepted as the line, and it becomes a little more difficult to change or more cumbersome to change.
absolutely. And in this town, they'll accept a stamp plan 10 years back, where I used to work in a place where they'd only do it 3 years. So it is worth it to have some plans.
Okay, any more questions?
That was all my comments. That's
Okay.
it.
I'm going to actually invite you two in a second, but before I do, you can see the theme here is this is why we want Essex to be here. There's a lot of these questions. You don't know the reason, you don't know the answer, you think it's this.
Mhm.
It'd be good to have definitive answer from the people responsible for the work. One thing I would like to see is could you get a data sheet for the chemical?
Mhm.
Submit it to Chuck,
Sure.
have that in the record of this project.
Yep,
We've dealt with that before, but, just to have it in the record.
sure.
Okay, before I move on, then, sure, do you have anything you want to say?
No questions.
Craig?
Are we allowed to ask the cost associated with this treatment?
No,
I have no.
Well, it's in the scope of work.
There's the scope of work, that little piece of paper there. Was that online?
It was.
I don't know if I,
That's laid it out.
in the right spot probably. Okay, thank you.
yeah,
That's all.
but the bottom line is that cost isn't a jurisdictional issue. Maybe a good curiosity issue.
Yes, definitely my own curiosity.
Yeah, okay.
And I like hard copies. I know I'm killing a lot of trees, but that's why I have this, is Chuck sent it to me because I requested it.
And I never have to look. You always have them.
Right,
I just ask you.
right.
If only they made paper from trees that happen, would be all set.
Yeah.
Okay, does anybody else on the commission have any additional comments, questions? No. Chuck, do you have any additional comments, questions? I know you've asked 10 already, but
No, I'm good. Want to make sure that we have time for, one question about, is there anything we need to, is there anything the commission needs to help them make a decision that we would ask Mike to get? That would delay this process. So just remember those two things go together. Like you asked for data sheets, that
which
might,
I believe we can assume will be provided and not have it whole thing.
and then I just want to make sure we get all the conditions
Yeah.
down again.
Okay, so before we do that, is there any member of the public, either here or online? Is there anything to add? I know you're here for a different project. Okay, then we're at the point where, Chuck's question, is there anything that would prevent us from closing and voting on this? Should we get to the conditions? So then let's lay out some conditions.
So you would vote to close and then talk about conditions,
Fair enough.
or vote? Any more, ask for a motion?
I move to close this hearing.
Anybody second it?
I second that. This is Tony.
Okay, and Walter, can you start the voting?
Walter Talbot's in favor?
Bill McKenna in favor?
Tony Rotalakis in favor.
Martha Moore in favor? I'm out of order, sorry.
Chirag Stadika in favor.
Greg Toffel in favor.
Brian Bowen in favor. So we have closed. Now we can get to
That
conditions.
was 700 in
Yes, it
favor?
was.
Okay.
And now we can get to conditions. What conditions do we want to apply to this?
The commission is allowing applications once every year. At the appropriate time, which I believe is in July, August, September, end of August, September.
Late summer, early fall is the ideal time.
I don't like late summer, I want a month. So we saying end of August, September? Okay, great.
It's early September.
And then, this is only for the treatment of knotweed. And when this treatment's finished, we would like to see lumen seed over the area of treatment. We'd like you to monitor that for future invasives and, remove those if you see them. And the rest was about the tree and stuff. So that's all I have.
And data sheet to Chuck.
Data sheet.
Get you guys a data sheet before the work takes place.
Tony?
Yeah, and just that we get a scope and a date before future applications.
Oh, good.
Any other conditions?
Notify the commission of the future applications with, but yeah. The scope and date.
Okay, so looking for a motion then to vote on this.
Sorry, I'm taking notes. I move to approve this NOI with the above conditions.
Is she ready?
Wait 1 second.
This is Tony, I'll second.
You call.
Let's vote. Walter,
Walter Talbot's in favor?
Bill McCants in favor?
Tony Rotalakis in favor.
Chirag Stadekar in favor.
Rick Toffel in favor.
Martha Moore in favor?
Brian Bowe in favor. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Very much.
Thank you.
Great night.
Thanks, you too.
Sure.
See you tomorrow.
Yes. You will. I won't.
Was that?
You will. I won't.
I,
Okay, so we're going to open the next hearing, even though we're not quite ready to go forward with it.
they're calling Maureen now to find out, so we just go through that, we'll just get a heads up over there, or we'll have to continue to the end of this meeting.
Right, so if she's available, then we will take it in order. If she's not available, then we'll pause it, we'll continue it till later in this meeting and do other things and come back to it. So let's give them,
She was thinking of zooming in, so I don't know if somebody's still.
but it was supposed to be around 8, so we're not sure yet.
Okay.
She can be available.
Richard's gone to check.
Okay, sounds good.
So we'll give them a
I see,
minute.
we're a
So-
little early.
Yeah, so we'll give them a minute so we don't jump around if we don't have to. Oh, if you got them.
I apologize, we have our new driver who's driving our other son to lacrosse, so I'm gonna be like staring at my phone, making sure our new driver gets
Well, that's two demerits.
it.
And I mentioned something that is not on the agenda while we're in our pause. I noticed while I was at Wood End Cemetery today that they laminated sign that was thumbtacked about the change in the rules had been turned so that the sign was facing the tree. So I've rotated it back around, so the sign is now visible as you approach that boardwalk that was just recently put in. I don't know if that's where it was originally hung, but that's where I saw it, so I just flipped it.
Yeah, we've got a few phone calls from people when they've seen the signs, but I think people are just doing that out there, so it's gonna be not as effective, you know, on August 1st if no one knows about it, but they should keep the signs as they are, so we can at least get some comments. More people would know what's going on, so.
So I just wanted you to know it's facing the right way now. And is that the place you had placed it was on a tree right near the boardwalk?
So I worked with the volunteers. I did a couple, and then volunteers and Kathy Kelly did a couple. So I didn't get down to what it.
Didn't actually place that one. Okay. And I noticed that there's a sign in the cemetery that says no dogs allowed in the cemetery. So actually coming in through that entrance, nobody should have a dog with them at that location. They've had to walk through the cemetery to get there.
Okay. What'd you find out?
She must be still on because it went to voicemail, and I left her a message, so if you have something else you want to address.
So what we'll do is we're gonna open this hearing right away. We're gonna continue it
Okay,
later in this meeting. We'll move on to our next things. And then we'll come back when she's available.
yeah, she's in, I think she's in the Conservation Commission in Weston.
Okay, so having said that,
She'll try a couple months.
this is to continue, this is on 167 Belmont Street. Continue the public hearing on a request for determination of applicability filed by Jeffrey Sarr under Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act. Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 131, 40 and/or Reading Wetland Protection Bylaw, Section 7.1. The applicant proposes to repair a structural upgrade of an existing rear family room. The upgrade consists of bringing the addition up to current building code to include repair of damage caused by carpenter ants. 4 hand-dug footings will be installed, and the spoils will be used outside of the jurisdictional area. Additionally, the project will remove a small 6-foot by 6-foot exterior deck and replace it with a 17.6 times 10 by 10 deck with 4 hand-dug concrete footings. The existing stairs will remain. The application and plans can be viewed during regular business hours at the Town Hall Conservation Office, 16 Lowell Street, Reading, Mass. 01867, and on the Conservation Division page under Project by Year. Assessors Map 7, Lot 15, file number 2024-3. Okay, so we have had a discussion on this already. Do you want to come up here and
Yeah.
give us an update?
Richard Kaminsky, my business address is 153 11th Street in Lowell, Mass. I'm an engineer. Just to bring you up to date, since the last time we spoke, there was an area, a grassy area. The question was it hydric soil and would it support wetland vegetation?
Oh, time out, sorry, my mistake. Open, we wanted to continue it until Maureen's available, so I
Oh,
should,
so you know, I was just gonna update you with what we've done.
no, we should be sure Maureen's here, so I apologize.
No, it's okay.
So can I have a motion to continue this to later in this meeting?
I move that we continue this until Maureen is available to meet with
Okay.
us
Okay,
later this meeting.
okay.
This is Tony, I'll second.
Walter, can you vote?
I was about to. Walter Talbot's in favor.
Bill McCants in favor.
Tony Rodalakis in favor.
Chirag Stalicker in favor.
Rebecca Toffenmo in favor.
Martha Moore in favor.
Brian Bowe in favor. Thank you.
Okay,
We'll get back to you soon. Walter.
okay.
Okay. Sorry about that. So Zero Cedar Swamp, the applicant has asked for continuation till August 14th, I think was the date. Yeah, August 14th. So can I have a motion to continue it?
This is Tony, I move to continue the hearing, 0 Cedar Swamp, Cedar Street. The next meeting.
August 14th.
Hi, Chirag Stalicker, second.
Walter Talbot's in favor.
Bill McCants in favor.
Tony Rodalakis in favor.
Chirag Stalicker in favor.
Rebecca Toffenmo in favor.
Martha Moore in favor.
Brian Bowe in favor. Okay. That is our hearings for this evening. So then we move on to old new business. First thing there is violation notices. Are there any updates we want to talk about? Do you want to talk about Pearl Street?
So we added one new on Willow Street. And I'll talk about Pearl Street after that.
Okay,
So 28 Willow Street. So this was a backyard scene from the Millette Soms and Morgan property. And it looked like there's been a lot of cleanup in an area that was known to be a wetland. Characteristics of a wetland, no lawn, shaded area. And so when we went out there a week ago, there was a pile of brush, pretty big pile. Pile of brush, a lot of cleanup had happened. So I took a couple of pictures and I sent them a picture, sent them a notice of non-compliance letter and let them know that that area looks like a wetland and that I'd like to check it out. I said they should have caution in this area and they shouldn't be doing any work or picking up sticks or altering it in any way. On Monday morning, I received a phone call from one of the owners and we talked it over. They were under misunderstanding about what they could do, but they will be removing the pile of brush out of that area over this weekend and they'll leave the rest alone. But they're gonna file for a boardwalk to get them from their property to the back of their property. And they'll bring that in and they understand that that process is something that the Conservation Commission would like to review, of course. And so it was a good conversation. I think I educated them on what they have back there. So I don't have any fear that this will continue at this point. So I think my recommendation would be to just leave this alone at this point and leave it at a notice of non-compliance and no need to upgrade it to any other enforcement method.
and they said this weekend, hopefully, so easy enough to check
Sure. Yeah.
happen, so. Good, and we'll leave it on here until we're certain that that's. Okay, Pearl Street,
Pearl Street. So, so I guess this is more of a Brian story than my own, but, Brian, mentioned that Pearl Street has, which was a project where The owner altered a stream to divert it from his property, kind of like across the channel. So it actually eroded the bank on the other side. So he was putting in large boulders and bricks and whatever to try to get it to move over. And I think he was filling, I'm not sure if he was filling, but it looked like it would give him more room, less stream, so we could fit a second car in that driveway. So we went through the whole process of an enforcement order and we got to a point, and they had Williams and Sparagus represent them. We got to a point where we were supposed to meet him the day the work was going to start. And the dad went into the hospital. Jack, what's his name? What's his last name? Jack something or other.
Yeah,
Rivers.
thank you.
Jack Rivers. Anyone knows that name? So, went into the hospital and this has been on permanent delay ever since. We haven't been able to hear from the owner. So Brian had driven past it a couple times and wanted me to look for the old enforcement order and write a new one. But since it was the night of the meeting, I figured I'd like to hear what the commission would like to say, and maybe they'd give me some direction on the enforcement order.
Okay,
I was on the commission when that 445 Pearl Street violation was brought up originally. I would very much like to see this stream bank project completed and we prevent further erosion of that stream bank. So whatever we need to do to get them to move forward on this, I would like to see happen.
Yeah, so what would you, so I'm gonna write an enforcement order. You can tell them to come to the next meeting, got the project within a certain amount of time. You have a lot of options. Maybe you have something to say, Brian, and then everyone can chime in on what the enforcement order might
well,
say.
yeah. You know, I'm a big proponent of at least talking about fines. So they certainly have had a lot of time to do something, to make some progress. We gave them a break in time on purpose because of the father's health issues. I have gone by the house. By gone by, Chuck said I drove by, I've stopped in, rung doorbells, knocked on doors and what have you. I did talk to a downstairs tenant once, which didn't help any. I did talk to the son, who's the actual owner of the house, once. I heard a lot of things that he would now do, none of which have happened. So at least from my perspective, I think it's time to push again and ratchet things up. So,
I think maybe it is time to initiate the daily fine until the work has been completed. If that is what it takes to get them to start building, because I think August is a great time to get this done while stream levels are low. And if they keep delaying, we'll be in high water levels in the fall and rain and all that kind of stuff. So, and the house on the other side is continuing to lose their stream bank.
and it's a new house that just finished building.
How do we initiate telling them we want to start fining them?
So if I can just, before we get to that, it may be that a more reasonable approach is to, in this letter, tell them that's what the plan is. Give them a date certain by which they finally have to make progress on this, let's say, to complete this work. And then at that point, we would come by to check it out. And if it's still incomplete, then whatever the fine we wanted to assess would kick in.
A quick question, how long has this been non in compliance? When did this start?
Started before I joined the commission, so.
Do you have a year? 2 years?
When did it first
More
start?
than 2 years.
More than 2 years?
Are there any other thoughts on this? I can't see if anybody, oh yeah, No comments at home. So does that approach make sense?
I was managing the screen. What's your approach? Sorry.
To send them a letter, reminding them the enforcement order, pointing out that it hasn't been done in these many months, and giving them a date certain by which it had to be done, or a daily fine would start.
Yeah, sure. I can modify the existing enforcement order with some new language, letting them know that we would like them to show up at the next meeting. And, you know, with the plans to discuss this project and a start date, and then let's see what happens.
So that is a reasonable approach. The only thing I don't like about it is giving them,
The best way to find somebody is to really have kind of like a track record of
yeah,
attempts to get them involved.
Right.
So that's maybe instead of, I mean, you could mention it, but if they don't show up at the next meeting, then you could, you could update the enforcement order with some dates. And if they don't show up by that date, then you could say you're gonna discuss fines at the whatever date the following meeting is. So
And
that's
I-
3 weeks out.
I
Oh.
just wanted to chime in and really strongly support what Chuck said. I've read a lot of cases that are cited in the MACC handbook and elsewhere. And what he said about notice, I understand, you know, Brian, where you're coming from, this has been going on for so long, but really giving teeth and a solid foundation to what we want to do next, inviting to some meeting, as Chuck said, if they don't show up, that just gives us a firmer foundation for whatever we do next. So I just wanted to add that comment. Thanks.
I'm assuming that whatever work they do is going to require a notice of intent, or is that not needed under a notice of non-compliance?
They've already got an approved plan.
They do.
They just haven't started their approved plan and their 3 years is nearly up.
Okay.
And we would have liked it much sooner than 3 years because every winter when I see the heavy rains, I'm like, oh no, there's more riverbank washing away.
So they would likely have to at least apply for an extension.
Yeah.
I think they could
They
start
can-
the work
They can
tomorrow.
get it done.
I think they have an approved plan and they've got a company that agreed to do the work for them and they just haven't put the shovel in the ground, so to speak, or the mulch sock on the bank.
So an enforcement order is its own kind of order, like it can stand on its own and it's not appealable. And it's desirable for commissions to leave things in an enforcement order because it's not appealable. It's, it's up to the commission to figure out whether they want a notice of intent, but that would be an added expense. And there's going to be a lot of expense in this also. I think the most control comes from leaving it in an enforcement order. Those can last forever. You don't need to resurrect them or extend them or anything like that. So that's why we're going to reach back to the old one, update it,
Modify it.
send it back out again. I think that's really all I have to say about that. I think we have the right thing going. My recollection was William Sparagis asked the commission to leave it within the enforcement order to get the work done. So it would be action as normal, just so like there's a notice of intent. But at the end of the day, they're not going to record it, but we would still have to release them from the enforcement order with a vote.
Okay, so any other comments or are we ready for a motion?
One more question. Did
Sure.
somebody said the number 3 years, so they have 3 years?
I'm mistaken. That's a notice of intent, you have 3 years.
Okay.
But Chuck just said,
It's an enforcement order.
this is an enforcement order, so the rules are different.
And is there a timeline for them to respond since we're at the 2-year mark? And
No, and that time, so we have to write it on the enforcement order, give them specific instructions what to do. So their direction from the Conservation Commission would be to let them know if we want them at the next meeting.
Okay, so we haven't given them any solid dates for any of these things yet.
After they were going to build and that fell apart, we haven't reached back out to them again, other than, through stopping by and calling, and things seem to try to happen, but they never did.
So nothing in writing. So I agree with Chuck. If it's in writing with a date, that's more solid foundation.
Yeah.
If you just talk going on people showing up at the house and asking
Yeah,
questions,
although it's an enforcement order.
right?
It's in writing.
Paper trail is always better.
Okay, so.
One other quick comment, and maybe this is part of it anyway, but I think given the amount of time that's passed, if it's appropriate, Chuck, within the format of these letters, to just give a little history, right? Okay, this enforcement order went on X, and we received assurances, it didn't happen. Nothing more than a few sentences, but if it's appropriate, again, I think it just enhances the commission's options going forward.
That's a good idea.
I was just gonna suggest, I would really like to have the letter that invites them to the next meeting also say they should plan to begin the work before the end of August.
Right, so basically tell them what the likely outcome from the meeting. Yeah,
Yeah, but if they are coming to the meeting, they should come to the meeting having talked to the company that's supposed to do the work and tell them that we're expecting that they should be able to start the work by the end of August. That would be my preference.
Yeah, we can give them an understanding of that's what we'll be looking for, but no one's gonna find anyone to do any work in 2 weeks. So they're not gonna be able to do that. But we might say, the commission would like you to come to the meeting, we'd like to blah, 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 whatever, talk about this project. And by this date, we would expect that you would secure a company to, start proceeding on the job. And if that doesn't happen, we need to know why. We need to, come to a meeting. And then at that meeting, you could say, hey, you didn't show up, or we don't believe this excuse, so we're gonna start finding at that point. Something to that effect,
But,
always about just keep on reaching out. It's not just,
but our next meeting is 3 weeks from now.
yeah,
So I don't want to give them 3 weeks to dither around and then they start contacting companies. I want to have them be told tomorrow or Monday that in 3 weeks from today, they're going to have to come and tell us whether they can start the work by the end of August or why they can't. I just think if we just say, come to the meeting in 3 weeks, we've lost really good season for doing this street bank work.
and Chuck is right, they probably won't be able to secure anybody in that time, but they might as well start the process.
Right, yeah, that's the flame I want to light underneath
I
them.
think that makes
And
sense.
Walter has his hand up.
Walter,
Have they paid any money to anybody for engineering or construction purposes?
my understanding is they actually have not paid any money to anybody.
And then the second question I have is, do these go out certified mail, signature required?
Absolutely.
yes,
Thank you.
okay. Any more comments, or can we have a motion? Motion to authorize Chuck to update the enforcement letter as we just discussed.
This is Bill McCants, I make a motion for Chuck to update the enforcement order as we discussed this evening.
I Chirag, second that.
Walter Talbot's in favor?
Bill McCants in favor?
Tony Rodalakis.
Chirag Stilicker in favor.
Rick Talfamo in favor.
Martha Moore, in favor.
Brian Bowen, in favor. Good, thank you. Where do we stand?
John, somewhere.
Oh, okay. All right, so then we need to reopen continue the hearing on 167 Belmont from earlier this evening.
I move that we continue the hearing about 167 Belmont Street.
167.
I think that's what I said,
That's what I
one
said.
sixty-seven.
Oh, did you? I'm sorry. Oh,
I, Chirag Talekar, second that.
Okay.
Walter Talbot's in favor.
Bill McCants in favor.
Tony Rotalakis in favor.
Chirag Talekar in favor.
Rebecca Toffenbach in favor.
Martha Moore in favor?
Brian Bowe in favor. Okay,
thanks.
yeah, you want to be there, and I guess we'll put Maureen on Zoom.
Okay, yeah.
So-
We've done quite a bit since our last meeting. And Norse Environmental has been retained to look into the possibility that there were hydric soils in the areas that were under wind question. So I'd like to introduce Maureen Harold from Norse Environmental, and who I've known for many, many years. She has prepared a report that should be in your packet regarding her findings. So I'd like to turn it over to Maureen, if I could. Chuck, I don't know how this works, so.
Well, Maureen can start talking or turn her iPhone on, so she has permission already.
Okay,
Maureen, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay. Hi, good evening, everyone. So Richard had asked me to come out to the site to take a look of an area that the commission, experienced some squishy lawn area. So I went out, I met Richard, I met the homeowner. I augured in 2 different locations within this lawn area. It had a rather deep topsoil fill material. I augured down to 24 to 36 inches in 2 different locations. I did not see any evidence of redoxamorphic features or concentrations or pore lining or oxidized rhizospheres, which would be an indicator of the water table. Again, at the time that I went out there, the soil was not saturated. There was no ponding. I didn't see any water stained leaves. Granted, it was an area of lawn. I didn't see any other wetland hydrology indicators. The adjacent vegetation nearby, the maple and the silver maples, those are considered wetland plants. But as everybody knows, you can grow a maple in your front yard as well. The understory, I saw multiflora rose and catalpa, some black cherry. Those are your typical upland plants. I did see 1 or 2 elders. Those are wetlands. And of course, we had a robust vine layer of bittersweet and some poison ivy and some Virginia creeper, upland plants as well. My conclusion is I would not flag that area as a wetland. That's an upland area. The house was built in 1966. So obviously, some of the lawn has been manipulated over the years. You had some grading for the house itself. But my professional opinion is that you don't have a predominance of wetland vegetation. You do not have hydric soils, and I did not see any wetland hydrology indicators. And I
Okay.
can open it up to the commission with any questions.
right, but before we do, so this letter from Maureen came after our period that we usually want things ahead of time. We can, in essence, she just walked us through it. We're reviewing it in situ, which we can do. So I don't know if anybody had a chance to read it ahead of time. But does anybody have any questions either on what Maureen just said or what you've read in the letter? Anybody on Zoom?
And have you had time to digest the letter?
Fair enough. Have you had time to digest the letter?
I do have a question. I did read it. And thank you for putting it together. It seemed pretty comprehensive. You talk about how these soils are mapped by the soil survey. Did you find that what you saw matched how it's been mapped, or are there any differences between your observations and the mapping?
Maureen, you still with us?
sorry, I forgot to hit the tap. Yeah, so it's mapped as a Merrimack urban land, which I provide the description in the report. But because I didn't have access to a backhoe, I can only auger so deep. Which I got down to 24 to 36 inches. And most of that material was just a loam type fill, sandy loam material that I came across. So the short answer is to confirm that it's a Merrimack soil, I'd have to do a deep hole. But certainly, you know, the urban land is an indicator of the structures you have on site and the fill.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the commission?
I appreciate Maureen's report. I did have time to read it, so I would be comfortable ruling on this tonight if the other members of the commission have heard enough. And I did look on the town division website, and the previous project was 2022. So, you know, that was the,
I know I found something.
right, now that was when they applied to build the tiny deck.
Yeah.
And too bad they didn't just build a bigger deck in the first place. But you'd still be back for the carpenter ends.
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, I am comfortable with what Maureen reported, that it's not a wetland. And so my question is, given where the presumed wetland line is considerably further back in the woods, I definitely want to see the yard waste cleaned up. I want to know what the commission still feels strongly that we need to put in a vegetated buffer, or is the vegetated buffer that's there sufficient? So I'd like to have a conversation about that question.
Anybody have comments on that?
Is the buffer in addition to what they already have? You're asking for something in addition to it?
What we were talking about last time was them planting some trees, shrubs, ground layer in what's now lawn. Because that soggy spot seemed to feel like wetland, but if that's actually not wetland, do we need to ask them to do those plantings?
Meaning, is it required?
Are we gonna require?
Are we going to
Are we gonna
require?
require it? Because the wetland line is now back in the woods somewhere. And I think I don't have a copy of Maureen's report, but I think it's certainly more than 25 feet back.
Oh, yeah, I believe it was like 60.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, even from the question we had on the arc, it was 42 feet. Yeah.
Okay. So does anybody else in the commission have an opinion whether we should continue discussion of wetland plantings?
Bill,
So I just want to be clear, because we were all interested, obviously, in the report. Thank you for the report. I also read it and appreciated how on point it was. So just want to make sure I understand what you were saying, Martha, that if we look at our zone of natural vegetation, because the wetland is much further back than if it had been, you know, that lawn had actually been identified as wetland soil, that you're satisfied from what you saw that the zone of natural vegetation, the 25-foot, already has natural vegetation. Because otherwise, as you know, we would want to see, if it didn't, at least a buffer strip with the usual overstory, understory, and ground layer. But what I hear you saying is, from what you saw on the site, that really is already there based on where the wetland actually is. Do I have that right?
That is correct. And the only issue I have with that zone of natural vegetation is that previous homeowners have been filling it with yard waste. So if we get rid of the yard waste, we have a viable zone of natural vegetation, albeit contaminated with some invasives. So we might, you know, encourage the homeowners to deal with the bittersweet and the buckthorn and things like that, but I don't feel like they need to reduce the size of their lawn by any, because there's already a whole big wide swath of vegetation between the lawn and the wetland. That's my thought, but I'm bringing it up. Does
Does that
anybody
answer
else
your question,
care?
Bill?
It does answer my question. And of course, I do agree with what you said about removing any debris and also the homeowner considering, as you say, about the invasives. Those are standard things we talk about even when there is a zone of natural vegetation, if we see concerns. So I'm very much on board with that. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Just to clarify, when Martha says yard waste, you and I went out and looked at it. There's lots of grass clippings, there's lots of leaves, and there's some brush piles.
I included a picture in your package. I took a photograph of an area where Mr. Saar had already started cleaning up, but there was a C2.
I just want to be sure we all have the same definition of yard waste, so,
Oh, yeah. Well, it's clearly defined.
yes, it is. Okay.
Yeah, he's gonna clean all that up.
Are there any other questions, comments on this?
Just a reminder that if you're trying to deal with the invasives, it's mechanical and not chemical. If you want to use chemicals, you need to come back and talk to us about it. Right.
Are you requiring that? Or are you asking them to?
I'm encouraging them, but I'm not requiring it. I'm just, so many people come and they say, well, we didn't know we could touch anything back there. We thought we just had to leave it alone. And so I want to do a little education that if you want to protect your trees, you want to do some cutting of the bittersweet vines, for example.
Okay, so now we've all been educated. Chuck, do you have any comments you want to add to this?
My only comment is that if we required a vegetated buffer strip, it would be full of non-invasives. It would be vibrant and contribute to the habitat. And so I think there's an opportunity here to not lose more lawn, but to improve what's out there. So maybe it would be something that the commission should consider to request that buckthorn is pulled and the bittersweet vines are cut, but not pulled down. That's my only comment.
But you're talking about within what is now vegetated as opposed to planting
Yep.
natives inside the lawn.
Right. No
So-
planting, just invasive removal, giving the opportunity for the seed bank to grow in whatever's out there, and maybe some monitoring through the course of this permit.
I'd be good with that.
Yeah, and I just want to say that I would be good with that too, because of course it is consistent with why we want a buffer strip in the first place. And I hear you saying, okay, we have vegetation there and so forth, but we have these invasives and so forth. And when we have a buffer strip adjacent to the wetland, we're certainly not contemplating that a landowner is going to put invasives in there. That's not what happened here, of course, but the idea of removing them so that the buffer strip is serving the purpose the commission wants makes a lot of sense to me. That's my comment.
Okay, are there any other comments? Do you folks have anything you want to contribute?
I just have a question. Just in terms of making sure we
Excuse me,
remove things.
For the record?
Oh, Jennifer Saar, 167 Belmont. Just making sure that we remove things properly. I don't know, I just want to make sure there's no chemicals, but learning which particular invasive plants, that kind of thing. Is that something that's written down for us in a space? Is that something that we?
Yeah, so we can send you some literature on that, but if you want, I could stop by and just show you what you're
Okay.
looking for. These seem to be two very simple plants to a D.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just for newbies like us. Thank you.
The buckthorn can be a little tricky if you haven't engaged.
What was the one that was pulled up instead of buckthorn? Oh,
Cherries.
Yeah.
cherry.
Cut down all the cherries instead of cutting the buckthorn. So that was a previous applicant.
Got it.
Yeah, they
That's the buck-
similar oval
Okay,
leaves.
so-
So yeah, definitely take Chuck up on his offer to come show you what to cut and what to leave.
Okay, I think we're ready to close. Can I have a motion to close the hearing on 167?
Just Tony, I move to close the hearing on 167 Belmont.
I, Chirag Talekar, second.
Walter Talbot's in favor?
Bill McKenna in favor.
Tony Rodalakis in favor.
Chirag Talekar in favor.
Rick Talfamo in favor.
Martha Moore in favor.
Brian Bowe in favor. Okay, so this is an RDA. We can attach some conditions to an RDA. Do you want to read the ones you think we have already?
Yeah, clean up the yard waste and remove the buckthorn and bittersweet within, that back vegetated area.
Are there any other conditions that,
I believe there was one regarding the post for the deck, not going into the roots of the tree.
that's right, we did talk about that.
Yeah.
Yes,
I mean, was that the concrete, pier that was gonna be?
It was, yeah, it might be in
Yes,
the
we're gonna
roots.
I'll move it.
Yeah, yeah.
There are a lot of roots there, but I'll try to pick a spot in between them, so, yeah.
right, so that's just a condition that you have to adhere to.
Move one sonotube away from the roots of the tree that's. You know,
Okay, are there any other conditions? All right, so now we need to vote on the RDA. So can we have a motion for a negative determination for the RDA?
I move that we issue a negative determination for this RDA, thus allowing them to continue with their project.
I, Chirag Talekar, second that.
Walter Talbot's in favor?
Bill McKenna in favor.
Tony Rodalakis in favor.
Chirag Talekar, favor.
Rick Talfamo in favor.
Martha Moore in favor.
Brian Bowe in favor. So just in case you're wondering, negative is not a bad thing. Means you're.
Go fix your deck.
Hi, Maureen, thank you for
Thank you very much.
your effort there.
It took a
Thank
few-
you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Good luck.
Bye-bye.
Can you just spell your last name for me?
My name?
Yes.
KAMINSKI.
INSK.
KM, yeah. First name
All right.
Richard.
Yeah,
I'm a PE.
yeah, I guessed at the spelling on last month's minutes, so, or
Oh,
last
okay.
last meeting's minutes, so I want to get it spelled so I can get it right this time.
All right.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you
you.
very much. And Chuck, thank you for your help.
Yeah.
He's pretty
You're
good
welcome.
guy. He's helped us a lot. He really did.
You know.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, and moving on to discussion.
I don't have any on me tonight.
Okay.
You sent
We
it.
have several.
Send me an email.
certificates. Okay.
I'll reach out. Yeah.
Thank you so much. The first one is 52 Loannis. Is there an update, Chuck?
There's no update.
Okay, so basically nothing to do there.
Yeah, so we had we'll be looking as soon as things are set, but
Right.
it's just left on the agenda,
I want to be sure we
placeholder.
addressed it because it's on the agenda.
Yeah, it's for next time,
Yep.
August 14th. We're
Right.
gonna do the site visit on August 12th.
All right, then the next one, item 6, is certificate of compliance for 16 Varney.
Is there an update? Yeah, there is an update with this one. Theo reached out to me and he cannot make tonight's meeting. A family issue came up. But he would like some more, so you sent me a list. And he would like some more direction on that list. He said that he appreciated that the erosion control could be removed. But the wood chips, he felt that those were there for a long time prior to this project. And he said he had pictures showing that. So about the wood chips, and I don't know if you want to go over your list first and we can talk about those items, but he did want to know about each one, what you saw and what
Okay,
you want done about it.
so before we get into it then, Walter, can you walk us through the site visit and a list of issues that you wrote down?
This was, this took place last Monday.
Yeah,
There were four of us there. Yeah, around the perimeter of the property, within the buffer zone, there was a lot of grass, a lot of wood chips. Many of the wood chips had spilled over and were burying plants that were there. To be picky, there was the corner of the patio was less than 35 feet from the wetland. There was a question about the parking area, which is gravel, so obviously permeable. Will it always stay gravel? And then finally, there was a post, an item of construction, 4 foot by 4 foot vertical piece of wood surrounded by, looked like concrete pieces on the ground. Those are the observations I had made.
okay. Tony, do you have anything you want to add to that?
In terms of general observations, the site is, the property is fairly well secluded. Most of the property, even where it's not wetland, along the border, along the lawn, had a lot of native vegetation, especially sweet pepper bush, which isn't something that we typically see. We didn't really see anything in terms of invasive species along the perimeter.
Okay, one thing I'd like to clarify is the wood chips that Walter was talking about actually are beyond the bounds of the buffer, and it's significant. In some places, I'm gonna say it's 20 feet beyond those bounds. So it's especially towards the back of the property, it is pretty far into the no disturb zone. Question I had on the patio and the stone wall associated with it, they are closer than 35 feet. They are shown that way on the as-built plan. Was that part of the approved plan back when that project was approved, that would go that far back?
So I saw that comment and I left it for Jack to answer that question because he needed to bullet point each inconsistency with the order of conditions. So I didn't look into that. I can for the next meeting, but that's what I would expect, and to not have it on the letter. Again, that's Jack. I mean, some explanation needs to be made.
Okay. Martha.
I would love to pull out, and I'm sorry I didn't bring it tonight, the proposed plan that they came with, because I think the post and the patio were pre-existing before they built the addition to the house.
I know there was a post. I couldn't remember where it was. It looked closer to the vegetation than I remembered it being, but when we were there, it was cold. There was very little leaf cover or anything, so it looked different. So,
And I didn't get to this site visit, so, but I remember we questioned Theo on what was going on with that post in the middle of the backyard.
okay.
So I know there was a post. I don't know if he moved it. I'd be surprised if he did.
I
But
would
I
be too.
also remember there was a patio with a wall that I think did already stick beyond the 35 foot.
So I would just like to confirm that.
Yeah.
And as I said, it's only as built. There's no
But I think-
subterfuge or anything.
They didn't build a patio. They only built an addition. So I think the patio is still the patio.
Yeah, and that was relatively early in my membership, and I may not have recognized.
My
that.
memory is also that there was a shed sort of
Yes.
right at the edge of the 25-foot line, something like that. Has the shed been moved?
Gone.
Ah, okay. So,
And there was debris around it, and that's all gone.
Okay.
Okay, so at this point, there are issues. he would like, so how does he want to have this point by point conversation?
So you brought up three things. So I remember two. So the bark mulch and the wood chips, do you want them removed from, you said you didn't say the resource area, you said like the inner buffer zone.
All right, so yes, I'd like them removed up to the bounds. So there would be natural.
So out of the 25-foot ZNV,
Yes,
that's clear. All around the property.
So I wasn't there. Can you explain? Let's say you have a wetland line and you have a 25-foot line. Are there wood chips within that area?
so you have the patio,
Yeah,
which extends beyond 35 feet. Then they have a number of the concrete bounds. And then going beyond that line between the bounds, there's wood chips on the ground for many feet beyond those bounds, further towards the wetland.
okay. And we generally ask for everything behind the concrete bounds with the yellow signs on top is natural vegetation.
Exactly.
And this natural vegetation area actually has wood chips laid down.
Right.
Got it.
So we should have this conversation with them. So how do you think this happens, Chuck?
I just tell them.
Okay.
Looking for a certificate of compliance. So he has to move the wood chips out of the 25-foot ZNV all around the property. That's an absolute, right? That's what the commission's gonna, all right. So the structure, the patio structure beyond the 35-foot, you want an explanation on that, whether it was built with this project?
Yeah.
Or did it exist prior to this project? And then that wooden post, I think it's like a prop or something that he trains his dogs with.
That's what I thought too.
So just an explanation on that also. Did you think it moved? It was pretty much in the back corner when
And it may still be, so my memory is very visual pattern oriented. And because of all the leaf cover that wasn't there, the pattern didn't look the same. I know that's relatively vague, to say the least, but that's why it looked off to me. And I just want some confirmation.
Okay, so
But I agree, I don't know why he wouldn't have moved it, just want to know if he did.
it just sounds like he has to remove some wood chips out of the ZNV.
One last thing, as Walter mentioned, up front, next to the paved driveway, there's a gravel flat area. Looks like it's for additional parking if they wanted. There are concrete bounds over there as well. And there's a area of this gravel where it goes beyond the bounds. And so I want to make it clear that we're not agreeing, that's okay. We don't want anybody to get the idea that we've approved it, now they could pave it or something. So I just want it noted that that area that goes beyond the bounds that should be cleaned up and converted to natural vegetation as well. It's not big. We didn't measure it, but you know, it goes a few feet out at the top of the bowl.
Those are the 25-foot bounds?
Yes. And that's off the additional parking area next to the driveway.
Restored. Okay. Walter Talley.
Okay, Walter.
Yeah, if they remove the chips, they need to replace it with appropriate vegetation.
Yes. Okay, so for the purpose of, yes, Martha.
When we were approving it, there were piles of firewood beyond the 25-foot line. Did you guys notice if they were still there?
I didn't see any of that.
You didn't see any,
No.
but I think they were working on removing them before they started the
And in
project.
fact, that's another positive. There's a path going off of the lawn into the woods, heading back towards Havel Street. We went in there and there's no yard waste or anything, so that's a positive. Okay, so at this point, they have things to address. we're not gonna vote to issue certificate of compliance. We don't have to vote on this or anything, do we? No. And so we can put that one to bed for tonight. And that brings us to certificate of compliance for 18 Whittier.
Is the builder?
No, they didn't respond when I sent them the, list.
Walter?
Yeah, Brian and I visited them on Monday as well. The first thing that jumps out, of course, is this huge plastic stockade fence on 270 degrees of the property. Looking at the plan, it does say stockade fence. Now, my interpretation when we first visited this site was that that described the existing crummy stockade fence that was falling down. I wasn't sure that they were going to replace it with something else. So I'm a little bit vague on that. I defer on to somebody else on that one. But given the vagueness of that, the fence itself has little metal mesh underneath it, preventing animals from going back and forth. And there were other places where holes were filled with wood chips, which brings us back to the wood chip conversation. Because the wood chips are, if I'm interpreting the drawing correctly, within the 35-foot zone. The other thing is
The 35 or the 25?
Pardon me, 25. There was a planting on the plan. There was a planting plan which wasn't really obeyed, and the plants that are in there are really in miserable shape. We did have that very dry spell 2 or 3 weeks ago, and it looks like it just basically wilted everything that they had planted. It was inaccessible. The fence made the whole thing inaccessible to see where it was relative to the wetlands. So I'm just looking at the drawing and making those assumptions. That's what I have.
So so the Conservation Commission approved the fence in 2 separate approvals,
Okay.
or the chairs did anyways. I think the one section existed and they just wanted to connect up to it. So, but blocking up the bottom is not something that the commission allows. Sounds like there's a issue out there with whatever, weasels or something getting underneath.
No, not weasels. I did a site visit today, knocked on the door to get permission to look in the backyard, and the homeowner came out and said, "Can I ask you some questions?" And so he walked the property with me and he explained that the mesh he put behind the fence at the bottom was because he's worried about his dog going under the fence chasing a chipmunk, and then he can't get back there to rescue the dog down the hill because he's fenced the whole yard. But he said he'd be willing to move those panels so that there are, say, 4-inch gaps between the panels so the wildlife can get in and out and his dog won't escape. So that was his suggestion. And I said he should also talk to you, and I encouraged him to come tonight, but he had other plans. So I think he's not insisting on keeping his yard wildlife free, but he wants to keep his dog safe from escaping out underneath the fence.
How big are the gaps underneath the fence?
There's some pretty big.
Some of them are like 6 inches high, so a small dog could dig under pretty easily.
Because the ground undulates and the fence bottom is straight, so there's a number of gaps, as Walter said. Some of them are filled with wood chips.
How big is the dog?
I did not ask, but he said if you left 4-inch gaps, his dog would not be able to get through that.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think as long as something gets in there, they can find their way out. That's, so maybe a condition to make sure that anything 4 inches or under is left open. I don't know what that leaves for the fence. I could look at that.
Yeah, there's a number of places around the yard where they have that mesh. But I was thinking with the 4-inch thing that you were just talking about, if they had the mesh and they left, maybe it's what you meant, 4-inch gaps in the mesh. The fence can still be complete, but if there's a gap in the,
Yeah, well, the
Mesh.
mesh are 12-inch panels.
are they okay?
And he has placed the panels right now side
Right.
by side.
Right.
And he says he's willing to remove some panels and spread them out to leave
I
gaps.
misunderstood. I thought you meant the panels of the fence itself.
No, 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 the panels of the mesh.
Sure.
He's willing to take some of the mesh out and leave gaps so that animals can go through, but his dog can't escape. And if you're worried about animals being trapped in the yard, the fence facing the street has no mesh under it.
Correct.
Because he says if his dog runs out toward the street, he can see the dog, but he's worried about this hill and to the river and, you know, there's no gate in the fence, so he can't follow the dog down into the stream and bring the dog back in. So that was his question about that. He also asked me a number of questions about the weeds that are growing up around his bushes, which are, as far as I can tell, not native species ground cover that was deliberately planted, but just probably invasive weeds that have grown up. And I said, we generally do encourage people to clean around their bushes so the bushes can grow, and that he should contact you for a approved list of ground cover, because they don't seem to have done the ground cover labor. They've got the trees up above, they've planted bushes, many of which are dead, not all, but many. And there's no ground cover layer. And there are probably pre-existing hostas and daylilies that are in that 25-foot zone of natural vegetation that were from the previous homeowners and survived the project.
So what's the instruction on the plants? They need to wait for a certificate of compliance until the plants are
Certainly, the
sustainable?
dead ones are surviving. I would
So
say.
if I had to add to
Yeah.
this, they have a number of sprinkler heads around. Most of them were up against the house. So it's possible the water that's sprayed just doesn't reach that far back. If the way it is, you have a house, and then they have a yard, and then they have this planted area. The things that are closer to the grass are actually okay shape wise. Farther back you go, the more withered they look. So almost everything back close to the fence has gone already, it's not going to make it. So I think the question to him is, first of all, does he need to reconsider how he waters that? I don't know if he wants to put in a sprinkler. There's a sprinkler that's actually up in a little area that sticks out, and I don't know how that's aimed, which is a question. But either way, it's not getting watered. So the condition is the plants that were supposed to be there need to survive. They get certificate. I mean, that's consistent to everything we do,
Yeah.
right? So that area is not in good shape. Another thing I noticed is that there was a pine tree in the back left that is in bad shape. All the top branches are bare. I think this might have been one of the two, Martha, that we talked about in the original project. There was one that is gone, but there was one back further, and I think this might be that. But either way, there's a tree back there that's in trouble. So it wasn't part of the order, so I don't think we can demand anything of it, but you should be aware that tree's in bad shape.
So he was asking a lot of questions about what he can plant there, and he doesn't like the way it looks right now because it's just all full of weeds. And I said he really should contact you and get the list of approved native species online. If he wants to change what's there, he needs to talk to you about it. And Walter has his hand up.
Walter,
Yeah, looking at the original plan, there was supposed to be wildflower seed mix planted in, shall we say, the upper right corner of the property, which I believe was, because there are some weird little flowers that I don't know,
Right.
popping up in that area. So I think that was done. I don't know if it was an appropriate mix for the zone, but on the other hand, we approved it.
That is correct. Was there anything else but the planting plan that you thought was not adhered to? Or was that
The
just?
the number of plants, I mean, I'm not a botanist. I do know a red osier dogwood. I love them. But the plan calls for 3 or 4 of them, I think, and there's only one that I found. So the plan wasn't really adhered to, in my opinion.
I recognized some arrowwoods, some
Yes.
surviving, some not. There was a river birch there.
Yeah.
But I didn't go in with the approved plan, so I don't know how what was there compares to the plan. But if they're having to replant for the dead plants, I would certainly say they should follow the approved plan when they're doing the replanting.
Okay,
Chuck, do you have any thoughts about the pre-existing hostas and daylilies that have returned? Is that something he can keep, or should he be trying to turn those into natives?
If they were there before, it sounds like there's certainly a learning curve with planting, and hostas are gonna be the most forgiving plants he could probably have in his backyard. So I wouldn't really tell him to take those out and try to plant something else, but I do think that we should just, there's an approved plan, he's looking for a certificate of compliance, he needs to meet the conditions that are in the order of conditions, and then make sure that all those plants are planted and they've survived. So it doesn't look like we're at a point where this is gonna get approved. My only question is, that list that was provided to me, you need all those things corrected, fixed, or replanted prior to,
so all those things.
Coming back.
were The mesh, the
Plants.
plants in bad shape. What else was on the list?
Walt, did you have the list?
Well, there was a removal of the wood chips.
Yeah.
There was the-
Yeah, wood chips from the ZNV. Let me look.
What can he do in the ZNV to deal with the bare spots where nothing's growing?
You can plant native zone of natural vegetation, the 25-foot line. You can plant
Ground cover?
native shrubs, trees, whatever he wants, as long as
What he
it's.
needs is the ground cover layer. So there are bare places that should be, he's got shrubs, dead or not, he's got trees, but I don't know. I think the wildflower mix didn't really take very well near the fence. So he's got wood chips near the fence where the ground was bare. And we're saying if he needs to take up the wood chips, then he needs to plant some ground cover there. Would that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, we don't want just dirt or loam there.
Yeah. Okay, so instead of the wood chips, to cover the bare dirt, to cover the loam, he needs some ground cover plantings.
And one last thing, I just checked the email. One last item was the several downspouts. One of them goes into a bed of stone, so that's dispersed. The one that comes down next to the deck just goes to the ground and has already eroded a hole where the water comes down. So the yard's very flat. I don't think there's any risk of it, of the soil being pushed to the wetlands. That would be a million-year storm to do that, but it's probably something that he wants to address just to keep his yard in better shape. I don't know whether he wants to put some stones where that downspout is as well, but it's clearly a hole with some obvious erosion
we're talking about the homeowner in all of these instances, but how much of this is actually a builder responsibility compared to a homeowner responsibility? Are the plantings of the shrubs and the ground cover, whatever it is that something that since the plants died, the builder needs to replace them? Or has the builder's responsibility gone to the homeowner now?
Well, that's between the homeowner and the builder.
Okay.
I believe the builder is submitted the certificate of compliance request.
So to piggyback on all of this, if the builder put in all the plantings, but the homeowner doesn't water them and they die, how does that work?
Good question.
Well,
Because the homeowner could say, I'm not spending money on water to water these plants, they died.
For our purposes, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they need to follow the planting plan. They don't follow the planting plan because of, say, a supply issue. They just need to let us know and make sure that they're substituting with other approved wetland plants. And at the end of the day, at the end of the 2-year, 3-year period, or whatever period the order of conditions established, we need to have, what is it, 75% covered survival.
Yeah, yeah.
Period. How they get there, whether it's between the homeowner not watering or the builder putting in the wrong species, not up to us. We just want to make sure that they've met the requirement.
So if they've met the requirement and then they die,
So after we issue the certificate of compliance and we go out for another project a couple years later and all this is dead.
Mhm.
I mean, it'd be appropriate to bring it up, but we don't go back in between and make sure it dies. That's why we're having, those 3 years are supposed to have it take root and establish itself so they will survive. I mean, I think we've gone back and forth this a couple times, some, other commissions. 100% at issuance of certificate of compliance, then expecting, somewhere, some portion of that will die over the years. But think of it this way, we are saying yes to a project. And as part of that, yes, we are asking for mitigation that's supposed to be there in perpetuity. So they are agreeing to planting a vegetated buffer strip, and that doesn't go out when they want a swing set there. That's what they gave away to get their addition or their driveway or whatever, or pool. And so that always should be there.
so basically they're withered away in the timeline of waiting for compliance.
Yeah,
So they need
Yeah.
to be replanted.
they usually water them. Usually the builder, understands that. I mean, see, this builder's been here several times with us. So I don't know what happened. And they didn't answer the email. So those two things are out there.
Another thing I noticed when we were out there is the place where the erosion control was laid down is now a strip 4 inches wide of bare dirt. So I suggested to the homeowner that was something that should also be replanted with grass.
Seed, best seed.
Grass seed.
Yeah,
to
okay.
Fill in that strip where the erosion control was taken up. Behind that, in one part of the yard, clearly was established grass before and has not been being mowed and is like 12-inch tall grass. And then other parts are the various weeds and wildflowers. But I suggested he could mow that grass that's on the other side of the erosion control before you get back to the bushes that were planted. Is that correct advice?
Yeah, that sounds fine.
Okay.
Okay, so at this point, I'd say it's clear that we're not gonna issue a COC on this tonight. So you have a good list of things to chat with them about. So at this point, I think we can move on. We don't need to vote on this or anything. So the next thing would be the next conservation DPW coordination meeting, which is August 6th.
I'm available to zoom in on that.
Right. And once again, I believe I am. Time will tell.
Yeah, and one of the items on the list is going to be mowing Bear Meadow, and specifically the area around the pavilion, which is 18-inch high grass. And no poison ivy.
Yeah. Another thing that should be on it is, I was in town forest today. And if you remember, there was that channel that had been cut across one of the trails, big erosion path going right into the wetlands. Jeff has done a great job at cleaning that up. There's a new pipe in there. It's level. There's good stone on either end of it to hold it in place. That should last. It looks like great. And the other thing I like is the level is such that it won't entirely drain the smaller pool of water to the right of that path away from the wetland. So we should at least give them thank you for doing that well.
Yeah, you're welcome, because I was there and set that up. All right,
Okay,
and I think I told you that.
I don't think so. Because that was a burn my saddle for a long time. I wouldn't
I
remember.
mentioned the pipe and having, well, whatever.
Okay, well,
I'll tell Jeff.
thank you,
I'll tell
Jeff.
Jeff. Yeah, we
Thank you,
established
Jeff.
the
You
elevation
and
based
Jeff
on
too.
the staining on the tree next to the.
Okay,
next to-
well, you done good.
Well, let's find out in the spring,
Okay,
so.
yeah. So Walter's doing the volunteer, Chuck, so you're all set. All right, any
Yeah,
bills?
Thank you for working with Jeff on that, Chuck.
I think it was your direction that I was out there to make sure that it was
I
done.
was suggesting a lot of times, but the channel was getting deeper. I thought we were gonna have our own Grand Canyon.
It's all you, man. I mean,
Okay, any bills approved?
there's none.
Any administrators report?
I know.
Besides, you got that briefing in place.
No.
Okay, now minutes for approval. We have two sets. This actually says it wrong. I think the first one is 6/12, correct? Has everybody had a chance to review it? Have you sent comments in, or do you have any comments you want to lay out here?
That was the meeting we approved the plan for Bear Meadow and the new
Land use
land
policy.
use policies.
Okay,
Did I write those minutes?
I did.
You wrote those minutes, okay. And I think I saw a few typos, but nothing worth.
Okay,
complaining about.
if you want to, okay. In that case, then can I have a motion to approve the minutes for June 12th?
Go ahead.
I move to approve approve the minutes for June 12th.
Anybody want to second it? Right?
Okay.
Craig, second the motion.
Walter Talbot approves.
Bill McCann's in favor.
Tony Rodolphe.
Chirag Staleker in favor.
Craig Catalfo, all in favor.
Martha Moore in favor.
Brian, vote in favor. Okay, so the next set of minutes is July 10th. Same questions. Has everybody had a chance to review that?
There's also a June 26th.
Sorry, not on my list.
I know it's not.
Okay,
And I think we don't have June 26th yet, is that correct?
Oh, yeah, no, it's not. Yeah, no, it'll be at the next meeting, yeah.
who's working on that one?
I was so busy getting that pipe right at the right elevation that I couldn't get the minutes
So
done.
I just
No,
want to
no,
make sure
I'm
we
glad you
know we
did.
haven't, we can't just ignore them. We do have to eventually approve them. And we can't approve July 10th yet because I only sent them to Chuck today or maybe yesterday, so they haven't gone out.
Okay,
So I think the only
Well,
minutes we
that's-
could approve today were
that's good,
June
because I looked for them and I couldn't find them. So I was going to say, I haven't had a chance.
Okay,
No, but so we need to keep June 26th and July 10th on the agenda.
Plus tonight.
Plus tonight, and I'll do tonight, and I did finish June 10th, so Chuck can send those out. And hopefully he'll have a chance to do June 26th, and we'll have 3 sets to approve next time, if I get mine done quickly.
And just as a forewarning, when you're reviewing these things, pay attention to the level of detail that is and is not in there. Because some of you are going to be volunteers for upcoming meetings. I'm sure you'll be happy for the volunteering.
I leave it to the professionals.
You will be.
I gotta learn from the professionals. We had a professional at one time.
Right,
So that's it for the minutes. Is there anything else before we say adios? Nothing. Can I have a
Whoa,
motion?
whoa, whoa, whoa. Brian, there was
Walter,
there was a discussion you and I had in private, if I may say, when we were at the Woodlawn Cemetery.
hang on. So it wasn't on the agenda. I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about anyway, but
It was a personal thing, a festive thing.
okay, yeah, you can talk about that, sure.
I'd like to plant a seed about having the commissioners, Chuck as well, at my house for a get together later on this summer, early fall. I have a wonderful deck, which is absolutely built for parties. So the social thing real quick, like on a Friday afternoon, maybe, a weekend afternoon. I just want to plant the seed.
I think it's a fine idea. We have to see how it plays out, but like I said to you then,
That sounds great.
personally, I love team building kind of things.
I appreciate that.
Yeah,
And Mr. Bo, I will make sure that JD is invited.
Okay, that would be good.
Could we do some sort of, offline poll of what dates would work for people? Because that's often the hardest thing is finding a date when everybody can be there.
Amen.
Yeah, Walter, just send out an email to everybody and ask them to give broad suggestions, and then you can begin to winnow it down.
Okay,
In your,
Or
in your
you
copious
and
spare
I can
time.
talk about another way to give people a chance to pick dates that work. I'll talk to you.
Okay, having said that, thank you. Looking for a motion for adjournment, Greg.
I, Craig Mo, said a motion for adjournment of this meeting.
All in favor? Sorry, it wasn't seconded. Anybody want to second that?
all right.
I, Chirag Stilicker, second.
All in favor. Thank you.
8:59.
Hey, before
Hey,
9 o'clock,
yeah.
awesome
Yeah.
job, Brian.
Right.
Starting and finishing by that clock. I getting gained.
I thank you. And good night. Walter and Bill, good night.
Good night.
Bill's gone.
oh, you want to get rid of us, huh?
Well, thank you for the, thank all right, bye now.
Good night.
Good night.